Hello everybody, and welcome to our workshop for the Canadian chapter of our Global Impact Venture Studio. I'm Katie McNeil, and I'll be your host throughout the session today. I'd like to take a quick moment just to welcome some of the Colleaga members that we have on the call. Today joining us, we have Dan Gordon, the founder and board chair of Colleaga. We also have Ben Matthews, the sales lead, along with Hugh Evans, our engagement lead. And of course, we have all of our wonderful innovation Sherpas joining us today. They're who you can reach out to in the chat if you have any technical or administrative questions throughout our session. Just a few quick ground rules before we get started. This is an interactive session, so we do ask that everybody leaves their videos on throughout the call if you can. Just remember to leave yourselves on mute, and that's just to reduce any background noise throughout the call so there are no distractions. And I did mention the chat function earlier. I'll just draw your attention to it once again. It's at the bottom of your screen. I believe Michiko just introduced herself in the chat, and she's also who you can reach out to throughout the call with any questions or technical difficulties. So we're looking at about a 2-hour session today, which really has one key objective: establish a common vision around the pandemic challenges that we want to solve, and meet some of the potential partners on this call that could be a part of developing a solution. So in the first half of this call, we're going to introduce you to our Global Impact Venture Studio and the value it provides participants and their organizations. And then in the second half, we'll go into breakout rooms and we'll discuss the types of innovations that we think are needed around precarious housing, homelessness, food insecurity, and mental health. So with that being said, I'll now pass it off to Dan Gordon to introduce you to our Venture Studio. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Katie, and welcome everybody. Thank you all so much to everybody who has joined us from all over the world today. At Colleaga, we're building a network of cooperative, mission-based, purpose-driven impact venture studios and innovation programs. And we bring together purpose-driven entrepreneurs, companies, and impact investors committed to change for common good. Our impact venture studio gathers activators, people like us on the call today, who believe that complex systemic problems we face are not going to be solved with traditional thinking, but by acting together, we can create transformative change. You know, the COVID pandemic has really graphically illustrated to us what complex, wicked, systemic problems look like. For those of us who come from the Greater Toronto area, this is an example that will resonate. If you are earning less than $30,000 today in Greater Toronto, it's very likely that you are not working remotely out of home. It's much more likely that you are in a factory or an institution or on the roads, and you're taking public transport, and that makes you 5 times more likely to be affected by COVID, according to the excellent Toronto Vital Signs report. And you're likely to have a job, because if you happen to be a woman, and especially a woman with a child, you are twice as likely not to have a job that you once had in retail or in hospitality or in personal services. You're likely living in a multi-generational home, and you're really worried about going out and bringing disease back and infecting your parents. But you can't move because you can't get on a social housing wait list, which has increased 68% in the last 2 years. And you definitely don't want to lose your home or land up in the shelter system, which is operating at 100% capacity. So you do go and line up the food bank, which has seen double the number of users in the last year. And you're stuck between feeding your kids and your family and making your rent, which has grown twice as fast as income. It's not surprising that you're anxious, you're depressed, and you're not functioning at your best. And when you thought you just really couldn't cope and you said, I'm going to phone 211 and do something about it, you couldn't get through it because they are seeing double the number of calls, with 64% increases in the calls about anxiety and 25% increase in calls about depression. That's what complex systemic problems look like. the combination of housing systems and food systems and health systems all not functioning well together. So we don't know what the solutions to those problems are, but one thing that we do know, it's not going to be solved by Doug or by Justin or by John Tory on their own. It's also not going to be solved by entrepreneurs acting on their own or leaving it to the market or letting all the great nonprofits who are also stressed out figure it out for themselves. So with about 10,000 deaths from COVID, there are about 100,000 people who are grieving in the Greater Toronto area. And that decreases effective functioning and increases depression. Let's not also forget that the opioid crisis never went away. And that has meant hundreds more deaths. So in the GTA, with about 5 million residents, what we're talking about is about 1 million residents that all have a similar set of problems. It's 1 million people in this category of food insecure, financially uncertain, precariously housed, seriously mentally stressed residents. It's an incredibly complex and wicked systemic problem. Or considering that there are about 700 cities in the world with at least 1 million residents that all have the same or similar set of problems, and they have trillions of dollars of GDP at stake. What we have is, as John Gardner put it, is a set of breathtaking opportunities that are just disguised as insoluble problems. You know, these problems came long before the pandemic triple crises of infection and mental health and economic devastation. But what the pandemic did is it amplified all of both these problems and these systemic opportunities. Around us, what we are seeing is entire global economies that are changing in real time and shifting massive value pools. For example, from dining out to food delivery. And as it's been true for the last 50 years, the computing power has continued to double every 18 months. So since the beginning of the pandemic till now, computing power has doubled again, amplifying the power of machines and information flows to do things completely differently, like harness 100 million scientists all working together to sequence the virus genome and figure out how we can get vaccinations ready now. Remote working, for example, is now the norm. And we know that we can connect with people everywhere on the planet to collaborate on complex, wicked problems like this. We're continuing to see information being democratized and become essentially free, but good information and knowledge commands a premium price. And among the domains of knowledge is innovation. And innovation is continuing to become a discipline that can be learned and can be taught and can be practiced. Along with the huge torrents of private money that are flowing into the capital markets, we're also seeing a whole new class of impact investment capital becoming more readily available. And from ideas like revenue-based financing to venture philanthropy to social impact bonds tied to both impact and financial performance. And so when you look at these mega trends with a platform and with orchestration, we can bring collaboratives of passionate social entrepreneurs together with impact capital from purpose-driven investors. We can bring the best in scalable technologies for good and the disciplines of impact innovation, and we can bring them together with the problems that must be solved. That's the Colleaga recipe. Activators in Colleaga Impact Venture Studios come to the studio because they have a commitment to the common good. We learn together the disciplines of what impact business models look like, how to do impact financing, how to realize impact and how to measure it, and how to do digital transformation. We bring digital transformation partners together with technological capabilities, investors with financial resources and programming, and we cultivate the synergies that emerge from these interactions. We help our collaborative consortiums focus on solving large, complex problems, and then we accelerate getting them in front of the right customers and investors with the right plan and the right story. In 2019 and 2020, we started putting our Impact Studios platform into practice with Veterans Affairs Canada. And we helped to co-create projects that improve timely access to clinical care for veterans with post-traumatic stress syndrome. Last year, we wanted to see if we could build multiple collaborating studio chapters. And so over the year, we brought together people from around the world to form a Southern African chapter of the Colleaga Impact Venture Studio. And I'm so delighted to welcome Lance and Raj and Jada and Tony from South Africa to today's workshop. Over a period of 6 months in South Africa, we established a mission for the Ubuntu Impact Venture Studio to co-create projects that improve delivery and access to mental health services while enhancing resilience and generating economic benefits for all people living in South Africa. And for those people who don't know, Ubuntu means our common humanity. It's an apt name for the collective problems that we work on. We've worked with our group to develop a product approach, which is to build on a digital, secure health platform that we have in our Colleaga Impact Laboratory. We've matched that with a multi-channel client engagement platform and with virtual mental health support services. And we've created a set of business lines for corporations who have to operate with social license and have interests in certain populations as their potential customers, like the 300,000 students in Southern Africa who have diagnosable mental health conditions and are not getting treatment, or like 2 million struggling parents, or like 4 million corporate employees and their families who don't qualify for health plans and can't get access to mental health services in any other way. And at the moment, we are in the process of validating the business model with potential customers and with impact investors. Over the past few months this year, the urgency of contributing to pandemic recovery and the opportunities that come out of that have become absolutely clear. So today, our goal is to launch a new initiative in our Canadian venture studio to build our collaborative ventures that contribute to pandemic recovery. Collaborative community ventures are consultative and they are consensus driven. Our goal today is to ask of you who are actively working in the field and generously giving your time today, what are the right ways that a pandemic recovery studio can contribute? What should our purpose be? What can we learn from each other today? So beginning right now, we will start actively learning and connecting using our Health and Social Innovation Community platform. Katie, back to you.
Thanks, Dan. So the Health and Social Innovation Community is a space that brings together innovation consumers and producers to create an innovation ecosystem where we can learn from one another by sharing resources and knowledge to ultimately make progress on complex challenges more quickly. So it is the central hub that we use for our venture studio. It's the place where we facilitate collaboration and communication amongst venture participants, and we provide you with all the tools and resources that you might need to build your collaborative ventures. So because it's such an important tool in our venture building process, we have created accounts for everyone on the call today. So I'd love to take a quick moment now just to log into your accounts and learn how the community can be used for you. Michiko has shared a link to the community in the chat. Please click on it and head on over to the sign in page. To sign into your accounts, you'll need to use the email that you registered to this event with, along with a temporary password that we've provided you all. You can see the temporary password up on the slides here, and Michiko has also shared it in the chat, so you can copy and paste it. What I would recommend is that you split your screens so that on the left-hand side of the screen, you have our Zoom call, and on the right-hand side, you have the Innovation Community webpage. I would recommend doing this just because I'm going to be walking through this activity with you so you can follow along with me. So I'll give everyone a quick moment now just to finish logging in. Again, the password is in the chat if you need it. If you have any trouble logging in, please reach out to Michiko or any one of the Innovation Sherpas, and they'll help you sort out any technical troubles that you might have. I'm actually going to get logged in myself now. Okie doke. So welcome to our innovation community. This is a space where you can come to find relevant content, our active learning courses, and our built-in community of experts and innovators. So to get started here today, what I'm going to ask you to do is look to the left side of your screen. If you don't see an open menu bar, you might have to click on the 3 lines just at the top left corner of your screen. And then I'm going to ask you to scroll down and select the Circles tab. So this is where you can come to find the Toronto Impact Venture community. So go ahead and click and open that up. Everyone should be joined to the circle. If you're not, you can click, you might see a join here button. Go ahead and do that just to make sure you're joined in, and you'll get notifications if you do that. So this is where you can come to find all the information specifically relevant to the studio update, or to the studio. So you can find all of the updates, event updates, project updates. It's really where you can come to continue the collaborative process. So you can share ideas that you're having, and you can connect in with other venture participants and see what they've been up to. So like the studio itself, it's still in its beginning stages, but as projects get developing and rolling, you'll see more and more information coming in here. To filter through information, you can go to the topics area, and there's specific tabs you can go to kind of view the information that's most relevant to you. So to get started in this space today, what I'd love for everyone to do is just make a quick introduction. So you can see here, Michiko asked you to introduce yourself by letting us know what you're from and what you do. I'd love for everyone to take a quick moment now just to write that. You can either share in the bar underneath her comment, or you can go right up to the top and make a comment of your own. And just write a sentence or two, who you are, what you do. If you had any trouble logging on, feel free to write your answers in the Zoom chat, and we can actually copy and paste it right into the field here. So take a minute to do that. I'll read out a few just while you're filling them out, just to get acquainted with some of the people that we do have on the call today. So of course, today we have Lance Malherber as joining us, as Dan mentioned before, and he's the Ubuntu Impact Venture Studio lead in South Africa, in our South African chapter. So hello, Lance, welcome to the call. We have Narinder from Marigo Capital joining us today. Hello, Narinder, great to see you, and welcome to the community. We also have Libby joining us from Vancouver, and she is the co-founder and CEO at, is it Janice? I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. Libby, if you want to correct me, feel free. Awesome. We have Mark Jordan joining us today, and he is the Managing Director of Tip Tap Foundation. Hi, Mark, welcome to the call. We also have Alicia, the Innovation and Chief Youth Officer at Kids Help Phone. That's awesome. And we have Adrian from Raising the Roof. So hello, Adrian. Hello, Alicia. Hello, Mark. Great to have you all on the call joining us today. So I'll let them all filter through. I'll take a break from reading them out. What I would recommend is please take time throughout the session today, if you haven't had a chance now to write, come back to the space, write an intro. If you have a conversation later on in the breakout rooms with someone that's of interest to you and you don't quite get to finish it, or you have thoughts after the conversation, come back to this space and you can comment on, you can reply to their comment and continue the conversation with them. This way, it's a really easy way to connect. We've had people do it in our other community. Just once they have thoughts after the call, they come here, they connect easily through these little intros. So thanks everyone so much for writing your introductions. It's great to meet everybody on the call today. With that being said, I will now pass it back to Dan just to explain the shared purposes that we're going to be looking at in our breakout rooms in just a few moments. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you again, Katie, and welcome everybody. It's so great to see such an amazing variety of people on the call today. The collaborative ventures form when team members share a similar vision and determine that their personal and their professional interests are best served by working together. A good shared purpose statement functions both as a personal touchstone for you as an individual and as the foundational justification for a venture to your boss, your co-workers, your family, your board, your community. A good shared purpose statement ignites momentum, it fosters team cohesion, and it also establishes who should be involved in your venture. It helps to answer these questions. Why is it important to me? Why is it important to my organization? And why is it important to all of us? The good shared purpose statements have got three aspects. The first element is who are we talking about? What kind of people, what type of population? What is the problem? The second part of it is what challenges or barriers do those people have? And the third part is why should we spend any time thinking about it and solving the problem? So the best way to establish a shared purpose is to focus on the problem first, not on the technology or on the solution. So I'd like to go through 4 shared purpose statements with you, which will be the subject that we're going to talk about today. The first is about mental health. As we mentioned before, there is this category of people who are suffering from tremendous mental health strain. And for the most part, it is youth. And it is many youth in the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities who've suffered from systemic discrimination, from lack of opportunity, unemployment, uncertain prospects. And if they have had trauma in the past, it is amplified with increased depression, anxiety, and other related mental health conditions. Our vision, our purpose, could be to provide BIPOC Canadian youth with culturally appropriate psychological supports, resilience training, and stress management tools that proactively provide supports and a circle of care. And on the call today, we have organizations who are already doing that. We would see that a venture like this would bring those organizations in, work with those organizations to say, well, how can we scale? How can we create orders of magnitude more capability, for example? Here's a second statement around food insecurity. So we know that traditional food systems, supermarkets that have produce from all over the world, the fast food chains, are not contributing to healthy eating. What does contribute to healthy eating and reducing food insecurity are short supply chains, local supply chains, the combination of local community grown food that creates community distribution and jobs. So our vision could be to provide food insecure Canadians with reliable sources of food by fostering short local food supply chain opportunities all the way across the supply chain, from food production to distribution to consumption to disposal. And we have Keith Colleaga on the call today, who's got a great project going on doing just that. So to make this much more concrete, this could look like the work that Keith Colley does, or it could look like, how about getting the guys from Evergrow who can put a robotic vertical farm into a shipping container that produces 50,000 lettuces a year, and putting that into one of our communities and hooking that up with Paul Taylor's food share program, so that we are creating new distribution, food going to the right people, and jobs at the same time. A third example is around housing. There are dozens of agencies that deal with housing. Adrian Dingle from Raise and Roof is on our call today. What many of these agencies are hampered by is a lack of data. They have standalone homeless management information systems. They have static data on by name lists. They don't have integrated data. They have islands of data, and that prevents a consolidated real-time view of all people needing comprehensive services. What our vision might be to collaboratively develop, test, and commercialize real-time, data-driven, privacy-enabled, interoperable innovations in homelessness, from first contact with individuals in precarious housing situations all the way through to achieving permanent, stable housing in the GTA. To make that more concrete, Community Solutions methodology is about doing this. And they have, with their Built for Zero program, managed to achieve functional zero homelessness in 13 US cities. They've just been funded with $100 million from the MacArthur Foundation to extend the program to 80 new cities. What about doing the same thing over here and creating new projects and tools that can link interoperability between all the organizations working in the homelessness sector? The last example that I'd like to share with you is the example of a vision and a shared purpose for a pandemic recovery studio. What is it that we want to do? One of the issues that we see is, as we said earlier, is that you can't leave it to any one group. But we know that all of the groups, as represented on this call, want to work together in the space. They are open to and passionate about collaboration. So how about cultivating collaborative impact ventures that from day one link together the impact entrepreneurs creating the products and the projects with the organizations that are doing delivery, with the impact investors that can accelerate pandemic recovery and generate new economic opportunities for all people in Greater Toronto. So what we'd like to talk about today are those shared purpose statements. Understand from you what you think the right direction is for a studio like this to go. Now, Colleaga is an innovation matchmaker. Most of the people on this call have not met each other. Our objective today is to be a catalyst for new relationships and new thinking. We're going to break out now into small groups. And when we do, please introduce yourself and your organization and your ideas for pandemic recovery innovation. Our first set of breakout groups will be by topic area, in homelessness, in mental health, and in food insecurity. Feel free to comment on any and all aspects of that or introduce new ideas. We will come back together, and our facilitators will either be the leads or ask somebody to be a lead on reporting back to our group on what we heard. And then we'll do a second short breakout linking, talking about what the objective of a studio should be and what kind of portfolio of projects a pandemic recovery studio is best positioned to produce. So with that, I'll pass it back to Katie to organize us into our breakout rooms.
Yeah, so thanks, Dan. So I think Dan said it all there. So the purpose of the breakout rooms will be to focus on a specific topic area. So either food insecurity, precarious housing or homelessness, or mental health. So in your groups, your facilitator will welcome you to introduce yourself and to discuss the types of innovations that we think are currently needed to contribute to sustainable solutions. So during the discussion, consider the tangible problems that you're invested in solving and the potential capabilities or resources that you could bring to a solution. So the 3 rooms will be facilitated by either Ben, Dan, or myself. We'll spend about 20 minutes in the breakout rooms, then we'll come back for a 10-minute discussion all together, and then we'll go into our next breakout room activity. In the breakouts, please reach out to the Innovation Sherpas or Michiko with any questions, or ask your facilitators, and they can help you out with any questions that you might have. So with that being said, I'll ask the Innovation Sherpas to open up the breakout rooms now, and I'll see everybody back here in a bit. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Dan, did you want to go ahead and start us off?
What we're going to do now is spend a few minutes for each group to report back. You know what? Let me kick it off. And I'm going to ask just 1 or 2 people in our group who actually were interrupted mid-sentence to add to what to our feedback, and then we'll go from mental health to food insecurity to homelessness. Our group, there was fantastic discussion around the people who really are real experts in the field, and a great mix of people coming from different places, but having such great insight. What I heard is that firstly, mental health is a stepped care model. All the way from prevention through early diagnosis through to disease, and then through treatment. And in a step care model, what's important, we heard from Kids Help Phone, is triage. The ability to triage to the right level of step care so that you can scale with self-care, self-help right in the beginning. That creates the biggest capacity, and then reduce the number of callers or people who need more intensive one-on-one help with a limited pool of therapists or counselors. That was the one theme. The second was personalization, the ability to use chatbots and machine learning AI to understand the caller and then be able to direct the caller with personalized information, either about care or about resources that are available to them, so that it reduces the amount of time that is required for high intensity resources. A second theme was building community, and that successful organizations and companies are building community focusing on their true believers and their ambassadors before they get into monetization. A third key theme was be in the place where people are. And so it's not that there is a separate mental health application. It is that there's a mental health gadget that's built into gaming and built into Facebook and built into where people already are, and is an adjunct to what they are already doing. And the last point, and I'll ask Alyssa, could you please expand on the idea of fragmentation, and how fragmented the system is and the opportunities there?
Sure. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the countdown. So I was just saying that I think we have a huge opportunity right now to not mirror the physical mental health system by looking at how incredibly fragmented and difficult it is to navigate when you're in need of mental health support, whether it's for well-being all the way to mental illness. And that what we don't want to do is to just take that same fragmentation and incredibly confusing marketplace and put it on to the digital world. And so I think that what we need to be looking at is how do we actually support people to get to the right service when they need it, and then to move between services without them having to know about different brands or products. And so I think what we're seeing right now is a proliferation of digital supports, many of which have really great efficacy and data behind them. But it all depends if you know that brand or if your doctor or friend knows that brand. And once you're done with whatever that service provides, you have to then know what the next service is. So I think we really need to be taking an ecosystem approach, understanding that it shouldn't be up to the end user to find the supports they need, but that we should be building that navigation in.
Thank you. Any other comments from my group on mental health? Great. Well, let me pass now on to Katie.
Yeah, thank you. So our group was dealing with and speaking about food insecurity. Unfortunately, some of us had to drop off for kid duties and other meetings. But either of the Tonys, feel free to hop in at any point if you want to expand. But from what I was hearing and what we were talking about is that food insecurity was not created by COVID, and it's important to keep that in mind. It's a large issue that existed long before COVID and has been exacerbated by COVID. And it's not about lack of food. It's maybe a little bit about lack of access to food, but it's mostly about income and not having the ability to, I guess, to pay for food. And Tony, feel free to expand on that for the group as well. And so we were talking a lot about scaling. So one of the women in our group, Janinja, was speaking about how she was focusing on trying to get food out to the community. But when you're doing bulk production, there's not a lot of option for dietary or cultural preference. So that's an issue that they were dealing with. And then using tech as a solution for giving people access to food. So we were talking about electronic groceries and that being a neat innovation for some of the food insecurity issues that we're facing. Either the Tonys, did you want to hop in? Because you had, Tony Colley, you had a lot of great feedback on some of the challenges surrounding food insecurity.
Please, Tony.
Yeah, so just to give the group insight, my experience with food, I actually have lived experience with food insecurity of 3 of the past 5 years. I just shared this with the other group, so just to give everyone context. So my initiative, my app actually was birthed out of my own issue with food insecurity. I had a 16-year professional career and 20-year professional career that included 16 years with 2 national banks and 4 years in the nonprofit sector. And moving on to being an entrepreneur at that moment in my life, I thought I was fully prepared. I had the income there, I had the resources. I found out very quickly that in order to be an entrepreneur, you need to have a job. So that was something I learned very early on in the process. So one thing I just wanted to make note was that, as Katie had mentioned, food insecurity it's the core issue at food insecurity is income. I had the income for 44 years, and when I lost all of my income and ended up on social assistance, that's how I became food insecure. The system was not there to provide any support other than, you know, the monthly stipend that they allowed, which wasn't really enough to even pay rent half of the time. So I think it's just important to understand that food insecurity has been around for decades. It's new, or I should say, it's more tabletop talk for a lot of individuals now because of the pandemic, but it's a pre-pandemic issue. I think the pandemic really just simply amplified the insufficiencies in our food systems in order to get this food out to the end users. So my app, although we launched it prior to COVID, COVID really amplified the need for our service and getting the food out from those retailers that are having an issue with surplus food waste and getting it to the mouths of those who need it most. Our service, because I was actually executing this on my own as a volunteer, I was moving food on my back, on my bike for about 2 years prior to launching the business. And realizing that I was doing it so regularly was the rationale that, wait a minute, there's something here. I've sort of stumbled on something. I didn't realize what I was stumbling on and the impact that it would have in a post-pandemic society. But I'm fortunate that we had developed the app, started the process, The pilot got a lot of attention, and we had inbound sales calls from major corporations. And then COVID unfortunately shut us down and stopped that entire process. So now our focus is solely based on grocery stores and meal prep kitchens, and maybe suppliers that supply food to grocery stores. Those are the types of organizations that we're tackling now to get this food out to the communities that need it most. And again, because food insecurity is an income issue, I think although we are able to supply resources to those communities, in order to ensure that those communities do end up, or not communities, but those individuals are able to get out of the system of being food insecure, they need active employment. That's really the only solution to doing this. We can easily take food here or redistribute food there. But at the end of the day, if something were to happen where the redistribution system stop, like COVID, then what do we have as a backup to support those communities? And we found that there is nothing. Granted, I do have a solution, but if my solution were to collapse at any point in time, what other solutions are in place to ensure that these individuals are no longer food insecure? Food distribution is a great solution, but it's not a, I don't want to say it's not a permanent solution, because there will always be food waste, but it's not a solution to food insecurity. It's a temporary fix, for lack of a better term. So I think if we're going to focus on how to solve food insecurity, we really need to look at what do we need to do to ensure that people are coming out of poverty, and being on social assistance. I know what it's like to receive $700 a month and be expected to survive on that. That's not reality. That's not something, especially coming from someone who worked and had a 20-year plus career, going from earning upwards of $4,000 or $5,000 a month to $700. It's just not a feasible. It's just not a feasible way to ensure that somebody is no longer food insecure. So yes, low-income communities need that attention. They need that support, but primarily they need jobs, and they need to be able to find those jobs and learn what those barriers are to employment in order to support them. Because again, I was food insecure. I don't live in a low-income community. I found myself in that status, going to the social services office and working with the caseworker and so forth. But I was never a member of that community until I fell on hard times. So I think it's really important to understand that income is the best solution to food insecurity.
So the clearly future of work and the ability to form companies that are not set up to become unicorns that return $1 billion to shareholders, but also have a mission to create jobs, would be an important part of what an impact venture studio idea could be about. The other thoughts about food insecurity and the links to income and ability to create new forms of employment? Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody in your group. An amazing story, Tony. Let's move on then to the group that spoke about homelessness.
Great, thanks, Dan. Yeah, we had a fantastic group. I think we definitely had a lean more towards precarious housing, which ties is one of the key stepping stones to homelessness. So, and I think we talked about that challenges, for as you lead to homelessness, is addressing housing for those in lower income, either that's permanent housing or with challenged youth, identifying transitional housing. So, and what the thread that came through is that a lot of organizations have challenges in either financing housing developments, or even in that aspect, getting access to the land. And it came out that there was a lot of land that maybe is underutilized, specifically, one of the things that came out was a lot of land ownership within communities and municipalities is religious, but it's getting knowledge about, yes, they have, this might be a landowner, but maybe they have some underutilized land. And sort of what we sort of think about is it, these sort of frameworks for identifying. So there was some innovative potential financing models like fractional ownership, some of the work that Adrian's doing at Raising the Roof in terms of, purchasing land, and really what we came, if there's a way to build a shared data repository of underutilized land and or land ownership that could help identify and validate new opportunities for development of affordable housing, or for development utilizing new ownerships like fractional housing, that could alleviate that sort of transition to homelessness and reduce, a lot of the other challenges around income, right? If you make things more affordable, people would have more money for food and others. So that's what our group sort of, I think, coalesced around. Was there anything that someone would like to add, or that would be?
I'm gonna suggest a theme that we didn't go very deep in our group on, but I feel it's common to the various threads we're hearing, which is this trend of providing a service to homeless people, to people facing food insecurity or others. And in doing so, learning, getting data, and then leveraging that data to actually work into prevention. And that seems to be a theme I'm picking up in the various threads here. And it's very powerful. And I can't help thinking this is where a transversal theme like that may actually be helpful, and could bring together various verticals we have today in a bit of a non-traditional way, but could be actually very powerful in pushing us all towards prevention.
Yeah, you mean sort of like a risk identification, sort of you had banks sort of addressing, those at sort of risk of missing mortgage or rent payments, or?
It's all about data. So it may be bank data, of course, but it also could be, so Ample Labs, that's Chalmers, as a bot that homeless people can use to find a shelter. There you go. You have, home food delivery where people will go to food, or even tip-tap payment, where are people using payment. So gathering data from multiple sources. We've talked about the sharing data on the cost of housing, cost of land. It could be another source again. It's all about putting different sources of data together and then applying intelligence to leverage insights that will then drive better decision or prevention to the end user themselves.
Franklin and you're on exactly the same wavelength. I was just about to say, the three areas we're actually talking about today, they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah. If you think about homelessness, there's all the factors we talk about: mental health, food insecurity, also are contributing factors to and elements of homelessness, combined with, how do you determine where to invest using data, combined with it. Ideally, we're at a point where we're able to be predictive and more on the prevention side. Where do we see a tipping point in a community, or where do we see a tipping point in a particular area, and using that data to actually be more preventative as opposed to reactive. So that you're on exactly the same wavelength that I was on coming out of our discussion as well. I think there's an opportunity to cut across what we're talking about in all three of these categories today.
It's a theme of interoperability and creating interoperable distributed data stores across and federating across what are currently disjointed data stores, but creating that opportunity to say you can treat all of this like a one giant amount of data that you can then import, taking of course into account all of the privacy and security and consent requirements that, by the way, for those of us who come out of healthcare are sort of bread and butter, that you have to do that, but then allowing you to put that into data lakes or data warehouses and analyze them either manually or different kind of automated processes. Sure, big undertaking, but the right way to do it. The other thoughts about this? Adrian, could you perhaps give us a little more insight into your thinking around a shared data repository for housing?
Yeah, I think that for our organization, it comes from the two angles. One that Ben hinted at previously, that was just an interesting kind of opportunity for collaboration between all the partners that could come into a project like ours, including housing providers, potential landowners, development partners, and funders. And I think that kind of development over that data set, which is just existing opportunities for an organization like ours across Canada, would be massively important in terms of our ability to scale. But with respect to data, I think that one of the things that, I come from a residential real estate development background, and I've been working in the nonprofit sector for about a year now. And one of the things that I'm learning is that one of the most important aspects to keep in mind when you're designing a space for somebody is exactly who's going to be living there, who's going to be the end user of that space, and kind of tailoring the process and the design to fit that person. And without doing kind of a formalized feasibility study and almost like a survey of the area around your development, you might not know who that person is, or you might not know who the group is that really needs that targeted approach to housing. And I think that kind of data, if it was available on a widely available basis across Canada, would be massive, not only for identifying what communities are most in need, but also, what populations within those communities can be targeted for housing, and how we can build, all the different options across the housing gradient that Raising the Roof can provide in order to target most effectively. So I'm certainly in agreement, and I think it would be a fantastic initiative.
Which is interesting. As we transition into the next breakout, which will be for about 10 minutes or so, it's this idea that we've been looking at for as practitioners and champions of open innovation, that open data is where the world is moving to. Open government, many of these data sources are available, just nobody knows where they are or how to get to them, and they're not integrated. So services that can pull that kind of data together in ways that large corporations can do, but small organizations do not have access to, would be a really neat way of creating real value. So what I'd like to do is ask us all to go back out into breakout rooms. We have shuffled them up a little bit so that you can meet new people and connect in new ways. And the topic for the next 10 minutes is, you've heard about these ideas about these interacting systems and other systems that are out there that all have huge opportunities for pandemic recovery improvement. Let's talk now about what an impact venture studio that is committed to pandemic recovery and to the future innovation of complex systems might look like. What would you like to see in it? What would be the kind of thing that you would say, if that's the purpose of the studio, I'm there? And particularly, can you also talk about how we connect together the people doing projects with the people doing delivery, with the entrepreneurs, and with the money? What would the impact investors, how can we incorporate investors into studios so that we are right from the outset building projects that are able to commercialize? So Katie, please put us back into our breakouts again.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kurt, and welcome back, everybody. Apologies for you getting interrupted mid-sentence. Once again, let me summarize in a couple of sentences for our group, and then hand off to firstly to Katie, then to Ben. We will be finishing before time, and we'll summarize with some next steps. What I heard in our group is that the real role for an impact venture studio that can truly contribute to recovery from the pandemic is a studio that, number one, is focused on collaboratives. These problems can only be solved with people working together, and so we should continue on and encourage collaboratives to form. The second thing that I heard is that when those collaboratives form, whether they're driven by the entrepreneurs with the solutions or by the nonprofits who are doing delivery, they have to be end user focused. They have to be solving a real problem for real people. We have to be getting out of the shop and looking at and understanding deeply what the real issues are that people face, and making sure that our collaborators are acting very much like the businesses that they are and focusing their product on a specific market. The third thing that I also heard is that these are not going to get financed through traditional financing. We're not bringing people in for a short period of time and then putting them in front of VCs with a pitch deck. It's a longer term commitment, and what we need to be doing is helping to understand and then socialize among the collaboratives new kinds of shared business models, the new kinds of business models that allow these groups to get where they need to go, and that requires impact investors with new kinds of financial capabilities. Then I also heard that it's all about shared and interoperable data. And if we provide the resource through our impact collaboratory to those groups that allow them to, number one, share their own data, but number two, reach out and find out where all the rest of the data is, and number three, have tools that allow groups to use that data either for personalization or for navigation or to enrich for other kinds of insights. That's an enormous benefit that one can provide to these collaboratives and to companies that otherwise would not have that benefit. And then in the same vein that we are aggregators of open data and all kinds of data, not owners, but aggregators for where it is, we're also aggregators of entrepreneurs and of like-minded thinkers. And we should be open to including all kinds of people in our studios. And lastly, it's about sharing, sharing knowledge, and making sure that we are as open as possible in letting people learn about what is succeeding in other places, and so that you can apply it to projects that you're passionate about and you want to succeed. That was the summary of what I heard an Impact Venture Studio should be about. Katie?
Yeah, so I think what we were speaking about was how can we use the potential data to inform not only new collaborative partnerships, but to narrow down on specific target populations. So we talked about how obviously all of these problems affect a super wide range of people. It's a very broad scope. So how can the data help us kind of pare down and specify? And we're talking about geographically, where do we start? Starting specifically in Toronto, potentially, and then broadening our scope just because it's an issue everywhere. But how do we narrow it down to specifically one location? And we're also talking about how does policy play into this, or does it? So how can policy changes bring about new innovative services, and how does that play into technology as well? How can we shift policies that have been very restrictive in the past to open up new opportunities in this studio? So in a nutshell, that's what we were discussing. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in and expand on that, feel free to. But yeah, that was our group.
Thank you. Ben?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we had a great discussion within our group, and I think what we really, we started at sort of, a little bit about the studio, and then really talking about, looking to have that local impact, right, place-based impact, but then also, hopefully you can scale that to other areas of the world, right? If we address some of these challenges here, yes, there are unique aspects to where we are, within Toronto, but a lot of those times, those things can also, are going to have to be addressed in New York or Paris or wherever. And the thing that came out of it is people said, you really need to focus on the populations that are affected by some of those challenges, right? And sort of understand those populations, how did they get there? Mark from Covenant House, talked about, the youth homelessness and how 25% come from the child welfare system, right? Just because the nature of that system, and then 25% are LGBTQ, right? And sort of understanding those populations. And then I think also even getting a little bit further is understanding their lived experience, to sort of potentially build those solutions as well. And it was also brought, even potentially maybe, giving those populations some sort of power back, or giving them power and enabling or helping them understand their collective power, which I think is something that, Land's mentioned about the solution building in South Africa, right? That, yes, so you're addressing this challenge for youth, but their collective power as sort of, if they can choose a brand in terms of a sponsor to a solution, right? There becomes a sort of a resonance with that. So I think it was all about, the challenge, the populations, the challenges they face, focusing on them, understanding those problems, and how you can engage with them and build those challenges together, build the solutions to those challenges together.
Thank you. Other thoughts, ideas? Well, I'm going to start wrapping up. Firstly, I'd like to start off by thanking everybody today. We are all incredibly busy. It's a real privilege, and it is so generous of everybody on the call to have spent this time with us. We are very, very grateful to everybody. I think what we heard today is the number one, that this is a very valuable place that that many of us feel that we ought to be. What we also heard are really great ideas about how to be really relevant. And that being relevant is about collaboration and about interoperability, and about empowering others. It's also about insight, and the use of data to understand really who users are, so that you can be very focused on specific issues, but also understanding where people came from, so that we can be going back into along the value chain, and perhaps preventing things from happening too. What we will do now is we will summarize today's notes. We will publish it out into our community. And we will also invite everybody who's on the call, and many people who asked, who were not able to come today but wanted to be on the call. We will invite you all to join us. In whatever way makes sense to you. That could be because you are in a nonprofit or a foundation, and you are particularly interested in a particular segment or a particular problem area. It could be because you are an entrepreneur and you see the benefits of joining a collaborative to further your particular interests in both impact and financial rewards. It could be because you are an impact investor and you're looking for a pipeline of opportunities. It could be for other reasons. Everybody is welcome to join us. We are working through our business models so that people on collaboratives are able to be trained. We are offering impact fellowships, and we are working on getting our fellowships funded. And we are also global from right now. You've heard from our colleagues in South Africa. We have colleagues in the US who are setting up a studio there. We have colleagues in the Middle East who are setting up a studio there. And it's all around the same theme. It's around thinking global, but acting local, making impact where we work and where we live, but understanding that what we want to do is have global impact and global markets and solutions that work across the world. So with that, I'd like to hand back to Katie, but thank you very, very much for being with us. And we will be meeting with people either in our community or one-on-one as we move forward. Before we wrap up, does anybody have any final comments or questions for us? The shyness of the large Zoom meeting.
I guess I do, Dan. What is the next step? Sorry, sharing out the information, but is there an intention that we'll continue to work with kind of some of the things that we've come up with today? What's the
Thank you, Mark. let me be more explicit about that. The answer is absolutely yes. We will be reaching out to people and asking specifically, is there some particular thing that you heard about today that you want to work on? And if so, we will work with you to come into the studio and join up with other like-minded organizations or individuals to create a collaborative specifically to deal with a particular issue that you want to deal with. So yes, very much this is about starting to form collaboratives and move forward on the very specific projects. Other questions, thoughts?
One comment. Thank you for bringing this group together. This is pretty inspiring and a different way of thinking. So really appreciate the time we had here. Thank you for organizing this.
Thank you, Franklin.
And just to mention as well, before we leave, we will be having another workshop probably in about a month's time. So we will be sending out follow-ups for that next workshop to everyone on the call today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.